Sarah Rector was Kansas City's first black millionaires. According to some reports, Sarah went from a shoeless poor child to living at Rector Mansion and entertaining African-American celebrities such as Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Joe Louis, and Jack Johnson. Rector's story is rooted at the junctions of race, indigenous sovereignty, children's rights, and the Oklahoma oil boom. Sarah Rector's family had been enslaved by Creek tribal members. After the Civil War, the U.S. government declared freedmen, such as the Rectors, citizens of the respective tribes in which they had been enslaved. Sarah Rector was both black and an enrolled member of the Creek tribe. The Dawes General Allotment Act, also known as the Dawes Severalty Act, robbed Native Americans of their land rights. The U.S. government took indigenous lands and gave the best of it to white settlers. Only those indigenous individuals who accepted an allotment given by the U.S. government were entitled to citizenship. The unassigned lands in central Oklahoma resulted in descendants of Black Creek slaves being allotted an equal share with their former owners. The federal government, unsurprisingly, pushed what was thought to be the least valuable land upon tribal members. The land was rocky and largely ill-suited for growth. What the government didn't realize was that millions of gallons of oil rested underneath those undesirable allotments, including Sarah Rector's portion. The $30 annual property tax on Sarah's land was such a burden that her father petitioned the Muscogee County Court to sell the land. His petition was denied. To help cover this expense, in February 1911, Joseph Rector leased Sarah's land to the Standard Oil Company. In 1913, the independent oil driller B.B. Jones drilled a well on the property, which produced a gusher that began to bring in 2,500 barrels of oil a day. Rector began to receive a daily income of $300 from this strike. The law at the time required full-blooded Indians, black adults, and children who were citizens of Indian Territory with significant property and money to be assigned well-respected white guardians. Thus, as soon as Rector began to receive this fortune, there was pressure to change Rector's guardianship from her parents to a local white resident named TJ or JT Porter. Rector's allotment subsequently became part of the Cushing Drumright oil field. As news of Rector's wealth spread worldwide, she began to receive requests for loans, money gifts, and marriage proposals, despite the fact that she was only 12 years old. The Oklahoma legislature even went so far as to declare her to be a white person, which in turn allowed her to travel in first-class accommodations. In 1914, an African-American journal, the Chicago Defender, published an article claiming that her estate was being mismanaged by her family and that she was uneducated and had a poor quality of life. This caused African-American leaders Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois to become concerned about her welfare. In June of that year, a special agent for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, James C. Waters Jr., sent a memo to Du Bois regarding her situation. Waters had been corresponding with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the United States Children's Bureau over concerns regarding the mismanagement of Rector's estate. He wrote of her white financial guardian, "Is it not possible to have her cared for in a decent manner and by people of her own race, instead of by a member of a race which will deny her and her kind the treatment accorded a good yard dog?" This prompted Du Bois to establish the Children's Department of the NAACP, which would investigate claims of white guardians who were suspected of depriving black children of their land and wealth. In October of that year, Sarah was enrolled in the Children's School, a boarding school at the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, headed by Booker T. Washington. Upon graduation, she attended the Tuskegee Institute. Sarah Rector was already a millionaire by the time she turned 18. She owned stocks, bonds, a boarding house, businesses, and a 2,000-acre piece of prime river bottomland. At that point, she left Tuskegee and, with her entire family, moved to Kansas City, Missouri. She purchased a house on 12th Street that is still there and known as the Rector House. Soon after moving to Kansas City, she married Kenneth Campbell. Rector lived a comfortable life and enjoyed her wealth. She had a taste for fine clothing and fast cars. She was frequently ticketed by the police of the city for speeding. She hosted frequent gatherings at her home for the leading members of the nation's African-American community. She also was remembered for sending her driver to take the children of the neighborhood to school. In 1928, Sarah's husband partnered with the auto dealer Homer Roberts and moved to Chicago to open Roberts Campbell Motors, the second African-American-owned auto dealership. New car sales faltered with the onset of the Depression, and the venture soon closed. The couple had 3 sons before divorcing in 1930. In 1934, Sarah married William Crawford. They owned a restaurant where they entertained the likes of Count Basie and Duke Ellington. Rector's investments and wealth continued to accrue through the 1920s, and while much of her fortune took a hard hit during and following the Great Depression, Rector continued to own some properties in Kansas City and Oklahoma until her death in 1967. And that is the amazing history of Sarah Rector. Please support this channel by subscribing, liking videos, and sharing. We are Amazing Black History, and we approve this message.